did I read correctly that your real dream was to be a punter in the NFL? Is that true?
Yes, that's absolutely true. I participated in punt, pass, and kick as an 8, 9, 10-year-old. I made it to the Super Bowl as an 8-year-old. And I've got all the photographs and news clippings, and even it was the Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions Thanksgiving Day game when I was 8, so that would be 1976. Walter Payton had scored 22 touchdowns on that Turkey Day.
Welcome to Fans First, a sports podcast where your voice matters most. Hosted by Hall of Fame sportscaster Jim Powell. This is the show that puts fans at the heart of the conversation. Whether you're cheering in the stands, screaming at the TV, or debating with friends about the latest trades, Fans First is here to amplify your thoughts, your insights, and your love for the game.
Hello and welcome to Fans First, a sports podcast. I'm Jim Powell. I'm your host. I'm honored to be in that role again today, and we'll be joined here in a couple of minutes by my co-host, Tyler Flowers. But first, we've got some great news. We have a wonderful new sponsor for Fans First, a sports podcast. It's the Georgia Advisory Group. It's a longtime, very successful financial services firm with over 120 years of combined experience. It's run by Dave Dooley. He's the founder. He's been there from the beginning. And Dave is a big sports fan, and he's kind of built his business kind of like you would build an all-star team. He's got a Georgia advisory group riddled with all-stars like a full-time CPA, investment advisors, money managers, insurance experts, estate planning professionals. They have their clients covered in every way. One of the many things I love about the Georgia Advisory Group is that it is a fiduciary, which means it has a legal and ethical duty to put their clients' interests first. Lots of us get nervous about trusting someone else to oversee our hard-earned money, but I have known Dave Dooley and his family for decades, and I can tell you he is a rock-solid human being and someone I trust implicitly. Once you get to meet him, you'll quickly understand why his firm has been so successful at helping people make the most of what they have. You don't stay in business this long in a city like Alpharetta, Georgia, unless you are a very respected person, and Dave is certainly that. He and his team sincerely care more about their clients than they do even about themselves. But don't just take my word for it. Go check them out. The Georgia Advisory Group can be reached at 770-746-6511. That's 770-746-6511, located in the heart of downtown Alpharetta, Georgia. Hello and welcome to another edition of Fans First, a sports podcast. It's my honor once again to serve as the host today. My name is Jim Powell, and we have a great guest with us, a tennis star who has had a very interesting life. Murphy Jensen has joined us today. And for all you friends, everybody that knows me knows I love tennis. I love to play tennis. I love to watch tennis. And they're constantly badgering me about, why haven't you done a tennis show? Why haven't you done a tennis show? You do football, you do baseball, where's the tennis show? So here we go. I got your message, Roger that. And now we're going to start a tennis show. Murphy, take us back to the beginning of your career. My understanding is your dad was teaching you and your brother Luke how to play tennis at before the age of 5. Is that true?
Yeah, well, Jim, it's an honor and a privilege to be on your podcast and to be sharing air with you and your listeners. Tennis goes back to the beginning. I want to say in some ways I was born with a tennis racket. Some say I was born on a tennis court. My brother will tell you I was born in a garbage can. And or some say that I was born on a fishing boat. I'm a big fan of salmon fishing and things like that. But Dad was a high school tennis coach, football coach. He played in the NFL for the New York Giants. He was an exceptional athlete. My mother was a standout high school gymnastics coach. She, I want to say at one point, had the longest dual win record in the United States back in the 70s with, 10 or 12 straight years. This was before conferences. So class A, B, C, D. It didn't matter what the size of the school, they were getting after it. But I was raised either on a trampoline or a tennis court. Dad built a tennis court in our backyard for our footwork to become football players. And he was asked to be the tennis coach, not because he could play tennis. It was because he had a racket. He didn't know anything about tennis. He was a football player. And there was someone who summered in Ludington, Michigan, the city I was born in, and gave him a racket and said, Howard, you can't play professional football forever. Let's teach you how to play tennis. And he had a racket, and they made him the high school tennis coach. And the way they would come up with the lineups was if you came in first place in a 6 or a 10-mile run, you played number 1 singles. If you came in second, you played number 2 singles, because nobody could play. And he was being an exceptional athlete. To be a great athlete, you need to be a great student. And to be a good student, he's just sought out the conferences. He went to teaching expos, and he'd go down to Detroit, Michigan. And there was a gal there that taught all these great tennis players how to play tennis by hitting on a wall. And Gene Hoxie, developed all these different ways. And we didn't have any indoor facilities, Luke and Murphy and Rachel and Rebecca. And we would play all winter long on the wall. Now there was floor routines and balance beams and parallel bars, and there was gymnastics going on and wrestling going on. And we had, you had to be you had to get good faster. You'd hit a little girl doing a back flip in the back of the head with a forehand. We literally learned to play tennis on a wall. And we were tethered to a net with what I would imagine was a dog leash when we were 3 years old. So we wouldn't crawl onto the court when my dad or the high school team was trying to practice. And then when we got big enough to walk, we would walk across the street, and we found ourselves a wall, and we just would hit on the wall.
Let's fast forward to when you and Luke actually had learned how to play tennis. And I know that, hey, we're all in families, and sometimes everybody's getting along and sometimes they aren't. What was it like for you and Luke to be doubles partners, as you were for a long time?
Yep.
Was there any friction there? Were you guys just like hand in glove? I mean, what was it like?
Oh, well, he's my big brother, and Luke is my hero. And he was the benchmark from the beginning to beat my big brother. If I could beat my big brother or my dad, I knew I was on my way, and it made me feel good. But I can't start this story without going to the beginning, where we would be in fist fights. He would be chasing me. He'd throw his racket at my head. It was raw. It was WWF from the beginning, from 10 and under tennis. Just, Goldberg versus Hulk Hogan. The two of us were just, because we were football players playing tennis. And we had that mentality and we played a lot. I don't remember taking a day off of tennis until I got to college. And back to my brother and I, that attitude and that energy and that competitive drive in everything, we weren't in fist fights, and we weren't mean to each other. My brother protected me and kept me safe. I looked up to him at the highest order. By 18, though, he was the number 1 junior player in the world in singles and doubles, and I was top 5 in the world in singles and doubles, and number 1 in doubles, and maybe top 5 in singles. So we were great by 18, and that was the direct result of competing the right way. Our dad did not measure us on the scoreboard. It was all effort and attitude. End stop. He could care less about anything but our effort and our attitude. And we could lose every single day if we fought our butts off and gave it everything we had. And now fast forward to the tour days, we've won the French Open. And there's a story there in that final, being that it's clay court season right now. But when we would compete in practice, the night we were warming up for our semifinal match or quarterfinal match in Indian Wells, a big tournament, like my brother would have me in a chokehold. We got too big to be pounding on each other because bones would get broke. And in our competition in a few minutes was on the court next to us thinking, these guys are nuts. If they're that competitive in the warm-up to the match tonight, imagine what they're willing to do to us. So, man, it was just a really, really pure, loving, we were wild animals on the tennis court that developed the skills. And I would say our heart won us more matches than our talent. We were talented, obviously, but if push came to shove, it was guts that won matches more than the strategy.
Well, winning the French Open in doubles is incredible. Your rankings were incredible. So anybody that's listening and watching the podcast today is thinking, well, I can't wait to hear the rest. They must have gone on to win Wimbledon and win, the U.S. Open, and they never had a bad day in their lives. Everything was just perfect for them for the rest of their lives. Yeah. Didn't exactly work out that way, did it?
Well, the day we won the French, I personally suffered my first panic attack. I sat in the locker room and a couple of things happened. I didn't have to prove myself that I had what it took, that I was enough, that I measured up. On the outside, Luke and I were the best in the world in that moment. But on the inside, I remember looking down at my hands and they were shaking in the locker room of Roland Garros. And I got sick in the shower as I had to tidy up for the press conference. And I had fears of what was to come. And the good news is I didn't have to prove myself ever again, that I had what it took. But on the inside, I had a different, in between my ears, I had a different narrative that caused my mental anguish. And rock and roll tennis was born, or grunge tennis, as Bud Collins would call it. And John McEnroe and Bud Collins called that match, that final, against the two Germans. John McEnroe would come into the locker room. It's the 49th anniversary of D-Day. McEnroe's screaming and yelling at us. And I had never played the French Open before, and we're in the finals, and I'm thinking to myself, why is John McEnroe screaming about me and telling him to kick these Germans' butts in the finals because it's D-Day, and these Germans speak perfect English, and they had nothing to do with D-Day, and, it's a scene. I would go on to the game of tennis was at a point where the ratings were down. Sampras was this amazing champion, number one, that they put on the cover of Sports Illustrated and other magazines that tennis was dead. And because they weren't selling tickets, and we were these wild rock and roll, grunge, long hair, Jensen brothers that could sell this game of tennis. And we did it a little different. We rode Harley Davidsons and played rock and roll music. And And the game of tennis embraced us. After pop culture, Rolling Stone magazine and People magazine and all that pop culture and society embraced us as these rebels of the game. And then the game of tennis made us a center court attraction. And for doubles guys, even today, that's unheard of. The Bryan brothers were the only ones close to, they did a lot of winning, but we did a ton of marketing and promoting, and growing the game was really important to us. But that for me led to me isolating, a depression, anxiety. I didn't really feel comfortable in my skin. And if I'm I'm always going to be honest with you, Jim. I was absolutely hurting from the inside out and dying from the outside in. And I wanted to be anywhere but where I was at. And so we can get into that later, but that led to my isolation, which led to my self-medicating, and that self-medicating eventually had me at a jumping off place by the 99 U.S. Open 6 years after we won the French, where I wanted to jump out of a window in New York City. I would self-medicate through alcohol and eventually drugs to cope with what I hated in the mirror. I hated myself.
Well,
not
luckily
the Murphy you see today.
You're clearly in a better place now, which is great. Yeah. I mean, I've read a lot about your career, and I know about your ups and your downs, but what I'm more interested in now is there are a lot of people watching this podcast, listening to it, and they're wondering, how can somebody that successful, that talented, that great, be depressed? How could he be down on himself? They won't understand that, just as you probably at the time didn't quite understand why that was happening to you. Yeah. But you found your way out of that darkness.
Yeah.
How did you do that? That's the question I think a lot of people who are listening let's face it, almost everybody in the United States drinks alcohol at one time or another. So you got plenty of company.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people then that they abuse it, and it becomes a real problem. How did you get through all that and clear to the other side?
Like my tennis story, I want to go back to the beginning. Since I can remember, I've been restless. At an early age, I remember Murphy's not a morning person. I was irritable, and I was discontent, and I felt like I was getting the raw end of the stick. I'm not the number one son. Luke's the number one son. That's something that was talked about back in the day.
Plenty of people can commiserate with that even today.
Yeah, number one son. So I'm the number two. I'm in the middle, and the monkey in the middle, Murphy. And that restlessness, irritability, and discontent led to, I don't want to say unreasonable, but over-amplified fears, doubts, and insecurities. If I didn't want to lose my brother, because he had always made me feel safe and protected since elementary school, and I knew where he was headed, and so not making it in the game of tennis was a non-negotiable. I had to make it, or I'd be losing someone that made me feel not only comfortable in my skin, but made me feel worthy, even if I didn't on the inside or between my ears think I measured up. And the real question, how did I overcome those things? Well, I didn't. I thought if I became the best in the world, I'd be enough. I'd be okay. I thought if I had the right gal or the right car or the right bank account, I'd be okay. None of that stuff fixed me, helped me. If anything, it poured gas on the fears. And so I've been a scared kid for a long time. And just saying that out loud, that honesty, but I didn't know what you don't know. Like, oh my God, I was scared. And I've been running away from me in the here and now at whatever cost. And drinking was a way to escape the here and now. And it changed things, and it worked until it stopped working. And at that point in New York City, playing the 99 U.S. Open with the birth of my first son, an interventionist, someone in long-term recovery, rolled in on me. Instead of the hotel manager calling the police, he called this guy, Steve. And Steve rolled in and shared with me his dark secrets, stuff he was taken to the grave, his story, his experience. And I thought he was telling me my story. It wasn't what he did or didn't do. It was how he felt. I felt like that. I hurt like that. I behaved like that. I drank like that. And then he asked if I was willing to get help. And by the grace of God, I was willing to it didn't happen overnight, but he said, we need to get you help. And I said, what does that look like? He says, well, I need to get you to a psych ward and then a detox. In Los Angeles, California, I went through a psych ward, a detox, and then I lived in sober living while being a top 10 player in the world. And while living in that sober living, there was a curfew and other men that were trying to get this thing called recovery. I still didn't know what was going on. And I went through a plan of recovery and I followed it, and I was willing to do. It took a while to still, like, how in the hell did I get here? And I thought it was the absolute worst thing that could have happened to me, but it actually, looking at it today, was the greatest gift ever. Was not only for myself, but for anybody and everybody around me. And the tenets, and it gave me a way to live that I didn't have before. It gave me a way to live. Anybody can stop certain behaviors, whether it's drinking or using drugs or self-harm or lying and cheating and stealing, whatever the behavior is. That's causing repeated harm. Anyone can stop, but staying stopped is a different deal. Staying stopped. And it really came down for me an admission that I was powerless, that I was, my scorecard read 0. I might have all this cool stuff on the outside, a life that people dream about, but the scorecard that matters to me is the one from the inside out. My heart was broken, and it had been broken since I was little. And my recovery has been the healing of a broken heart. And
tell me about the business you got started, because
man,
you're trying. I know you well enough to know that once you fixed yourself, you were going to try and help other people, because that's Murphy Jensen.
Yeah.
Your company is one of those ways. Tell us about it.
So it's called WEConnect Health Management. And 10 years ago, I left the game of tennis. Through the process of my recovery, one of the tenets of my recovery is being of service to others and helping others. People were there for me when I needed it most and showed up for me. And so if I'm coaching Serena Williams in World Team Tennis or Martina Hingis or Nick Kyrgios, you name it, I bring the principle of service in everything I do and being helpful in anything I do. And 10 years ago, I was visiting my in-laws here in Seattle, and I was asked to take a family friend to a support group meeting who was in an outpatient program. And he asked me where I'd gotten my great tan. Of course, I take him. And afterwards, we're having coffee, and he said, "Where'd you get that tan?" And I said, "Well, I just flew in from Richard Branson's private island. They had a big tennis event. Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic, all the superstars were there. And in tandem with the tennis fundraiser, they had an entrepreneurship program." And he said, "A girl in my outpatient program who works for Microsoft was there. You should meet her sometime. She's really cool." And so we get together and she shares with me this idea that we can leverage our telephones, these cell phones, and she was handed a piece of paper when she got out of her 28-day program. She's someone also in long-term recovery. And that piece of paper said, do these 10 things for the rest of your life, but there's a 95% chance you're going to relapse within the first 2 weeks. And she didn't have a relapse in her or reoccurrence. So while in the recovery center, she started journaling what were the drivers of reoccurrence and relapse. And it was lack of accountability to that piece of paper, the care plan, and lack of connection and support in real time. And what do I do between these support group meetings you're telling me about? And how am I supposed to find support? And she says, we could put recovery in our phone. They could be accessible 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And I'm like, this is a great idea. How can I be helpful? How can I be of service? I know nothing about technology. I have no background in healthcare. She goes, well, it's just an idea. I said, it's a great idea. How can we do this? So we built a mobile application with mental health coaching, recovery services, peer services, so people like me that are trained and certified in crisis and prevention that can help unpack the Murphy that was hurting himself and help people. And in the past 10 years, we serve millions of people. There's 6 to 8 support group meetings, 3,000 support group meetings a year. Go to WEConnect Health in any app store and you can find it. It's a free download to get the coaching and all that. That's a paid subscription, but it's available to anybody. These support group meetings are led by the peer services that are WEConnect employees. I am so humbled. For me, this is way bigger than anything I could have imagined, because where this journey started as a scared, frightened little 6, 7, 8-year-old, and then a scared and frightened 24-year-old winning the French Open, and then a person that thought that jumping out of a window in New York City was a good solution to my problems, to now being able to help God's kids.
Can you give us the URL again for your company for those who are trying to drive and listen to us at the same time? They may be thinking, I'd really like to get in touch with that place.
Yeah, well, the website is WEConnectHealth.io. WeConnect, one word, health, one word, WeConnectHealth.io. You can download it in any app store, or you can access it through the website. And if you're a HR director or a CHRO or a CEO at any company, we serve as a mental health EAP, Employee Assistance Program for Mental Health. And we're an anonymous confidential lifeline, similar to what saved my life 3 years ago was an AED when I dropped dead on a tennis court. I was going to come to that one next. Yeah, we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. But, when
I told everybody you've had quite the life, I wasn't kidding.
Oh, man, it doesn't stop. And by the way, I'm wearing tennis shorts with my suit and jacket just so when I can get out of here. I'll rip off my shirt and go practice my serve.
Nice.
I'm obsessed with the game of tennis. Sport or an active lifestyle is real medicine for this Murphy in recovery.
And a lot of others too.
Yeah, it is. And tennis is my medicine and part of my medicine. And I am just so humbled and touched that I get an opportunity to help others through this platform. And now, we serve Medicaid and Medicare across the country. And now we're serving, every company from any, these issues touch every community in the world, every community in the United States. And so we've stood up something that's But not every day is unicorns and rainbows. My heart gets broken on the daily from maybe a college tennis coach that took his life. I get the really hard call that says my sister is dying of alcoholism. What's her name? Where is she at? Would she be willing to talk to me? And then a week later, I get the tough call. She didn't make it. So this is real stuff. Our children are way better armed and equipped than we are, but the number one cause of death for children today is suicide. And so until the day I die, this is my life's work. Whether I'm with WEConnect or not, I will do this until the day I die and stop. And there's no better calling for me than to share my experience, to be of help to others. And that's it.
When you say you're going to do it till the day you died, that would be the second time that you died, right? Because the first one was on a tennis court.
Yeah.
You're playing in a charity function. Steve Gooder, a 42-year-old friend of your family, had died of cardiac arrest, sudden cardiac arrest. And so you and the Jensens were a part of really wanting to make more awareness about AEDs, try and get them put in every tennis court, every swimming venue, every school, everywhere you could put one. There should be an AED that can save someone's life, because that's just what happened with you. I mean, you're out there playing with Luke, and Luke says you hit a ball to him and he hit a ball back to you, and you went straight to the ground and did not move.
Well, this is what they
tell us about it.
This is what they tell me. It was in the Garden of the Gods resort. Luke had just been named the director of tennis, and he asked me on their opening day if I was willing to help him and come play an exhibition tennis match. And I do anything for my brother, if not anybody. And I jumped on a plane with my wife and my child. I have no memory what I'm about to share with you. This is what my wife has explained to me and my brother and others. And we land in Colorado Springs. We check into the hotel. I've seen pictures of our room. It was covered with balloons and flowers, welcoming me and the family to the Garden of the Gods resort. The following morning, I took my family to the zoo. We petted zebras and all kinds of cool stuff. That afternoon, I went for a little swim with baby Duke. He's 4 years old. And by 6 p.m., the tennis event started. And I'm playing with Abigail Spears, and my brother's playing with somebody else. And the second game, I was to serve, and I went and served. I'm in a trophy-like serving position. And the ball, I don't swing at the ball. I toss the ball hits the ground, and then I fall back like a big tree, landing and my head taking the fall and cracking open. And I dead on a tennis court for 18 minutes. And the first thing that was screamed was, "Where's the AED?" And the second thing was 2 or 3 off-duty medical professionals ran to my aid, ripped off my shirt, broke my ribs and sternum, started chest compressions and CPR. Over 18 minutes, they shocked me 6 times with that AED. Clear, 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 no pulse, boom. 6 times over 18 minutes. My body's gray, stone cold. The ambulance arrives, throws me in the ambulance. They shock me 2 more times before they get a pulse. And they induced me in a coma for the next week. And they didn't know which Murphy they would get back. Mathematically, I should have permanent brain damage. And when I came out of that coma, and they also thought I was paralyzed from the neck down from the head injury because I wasn't responsive to pain. And so they just prayed, and the world of tennis rallied. The world of tennis came to my aid. Andre Agassi was on the phone with my brother 5 times a day. I can't talk about that without getting emotional. Chris Ebert was calling, you name it, from Federer to Bill Gates, you name it. The world of tennis that loved tennis rallied for my family, for my wife, and here's the big mama, is that my recovery community were flying in from around the country. Now, my point of reference is this. In 1999, when I ended up in a detox and started my sober life and my recovery life, there was no one there. Had I had terminal cancer, they may have named a stadium after Luke and I. But with mental health, that's not the case. There's so much stigma attached and associated with those things. But with heart disease, and I think because of the transformation that has taken place for me since my recovery path, there was a lot of love for me and my brother, but they had seen this Murphy come out of the ashes like a rising phoenix, to, I don't know. I don't know if I know I'll never be able to repay the debt of love and service that the tennis community gave my family, but next level. So I didn't know who I was, where I was when I came out of that coma for a few days. And cognitively, I'm still wrestling with stuff cognitively, but we're doing this thing like I learned in early recovery, one day at a time, and
Is it true that as you were just coming out of the coma, that the first thing you said, I believe, to your wife was, "This is going to make a great chapter in my book"?
that was when they knew I was going to be okay. I didn't know who I was, where I was for quite 4 or 5 days, and cognitively I failed all tests. But then one day the light bulb went zzz, and I said, let me get this straight. I'm in the ICU. I've had a cardiac arrest. I've been in a coma. And that's when I said, this will make a great chapter in my book. And they're like, okay, we can go home now. Murphy's back.
Murphy's back.
Murphy's alive and he's in there. And yeah, whatever I've survived has been a beyond blessed gift to me, because I get a perspective that is undeniable, that I'm looking at this tree. I want to go give that a hug. I'm not a tree hugger. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I love this thing called life. I love that it's sunny today, and I love when it's raining. Whatever. I get to participate in something that mathematically I shouldn't be participating in. And the moniker that I got coming out of that coma and recovery the past 3 years, I've already lifted weights, played tennis. I'm going to go for a run, and I'm going to jump in the ocean with the whales in about an hour. For real. I live in Seattle, Washington. There's whales and sea lions and salmon, and I'm going for it. And it might be freezing, but I'm doing it. Why? Because it's there to be done. And I am here to tell you, you don't have to have a cardiac arrest and survive the unsurvivable to have hope that, if no matter how shitty, excuse my French, things seem to be, hang in there. Hang in there. And people ask me a lot, what advice can you give? The greatest gift I have is, Jim, is if I'm hurting, I can call you and say, Jim, I need some help. And I don't know how to navigate Tuesday. I just came off a rough weekend, and I'm overwhelmed. Have you ever been overwhelmed, Jim?
Of course. I'm sure all humans have been overwhelmed at one time or another.
So you know what I'm talking about.
It's not a good feeling.
Yeah. Or I felt, hey, Jim, I'm feeling like a piece of garbage today because things didn't work out the way I had hoped them to. Have you ever felt that way?
Of course.
And so I'm only as sick as my secrets. And by picking up that phone, and the greatest tool I can suggest is if you're hurting and you need some help, pick up a phone to a safe place and share what's going on and do your best to tell the truth. The truth has given me a freedom that I didn't even know was available to a knucklehead like me. So,
well, you mentioned before, you don't know how you can't repay all the favors, all the love, all the things that were bestowed upon you in your time of need. But clearly with WeConnect and other ventures that you're a part of, you are giving back and you're doing it with great joy, which is rather intoxicating to people who are down. So I congratulate you on, you climbed the mountain. You started at the bottom of the mountain, you climbed all the way to the top, and then you beat your chest, and here you are. So congratulations.
Thank you, Jim. I love you, pal.
Same.
And I love your listeners, and there's nothing they can do about it. Boom!
Well, Murphy, it's been a great honor to have you with us. We've really enjoyed it. It's been highly informative, very entertaining, and definitely off the beaten path for Fans First. One thing I want to do, though, I've got one trick left up my sleeve, and that is flip the switch.
What's that?
So flip the switch is when we get tired of keeping you in your comfort zone where you're just nice and happy, and instead we go in a completely different direction and find out something else about Murphy Jensen we otherwise wouldn't get. So in this case, I want to ask you about, did I read correctly that your real dream was to be a punter in the NFL? Is that true?
Yes, that's absolutely true. I participated in punt, pass, and kick as an 8, 9, 10-year-old. I made it to the Super Bowl as an 8-year-old. And I've got all the photographs and news clippings, and even it was the Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions Thanksgiving Day game when I was 8. So that would be 1976. Walter Payton had scored 22 touchdowns on that turkey day. So I've got the boot, I've got a size 14 shoe, and I've got the leg. I punt righty. And
how often do you punt these days?
I still want to punt in the NFL. I am not expensive. I will take league minimum, and I'll be cheap laundry. You never get your uniform dirty as a punter. I've still got great flexibility. I'm no Ray Guy, but I'm a Murphy that can get some hang time. And I'm thinking, it's not like a field goal kicker, and I don't think I need to learn how to get someone else to hold the ball for the field goals. But yeah, and I'm friends with a number of special teams coaches, which tell me that I wouldn't pass the physical, which is the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard in my life. I mean, who do you think is a better athlete? A professional tennis player or a punter? Who could run 4 hours on a tennis court? A punter or a tennis player?
Tennis player.
I wouldn't pass the physical. How physical do I got to be? And if I'm out trying to tackle guys, I'm probably not doing my job right, because if the punter goes down, we can't get out of bad field position. So I've been denied any tryouts with a couple of teams in the league, but now I'm friends with a couple of owners in the league.
Oh.
And wow. I'm going to, flex my muscle and get myself a tryout and make this dream come true. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to buy a team. I'm going to buy a team in the NFL, and I'm going to make myself the punter. I'll be a 60-year-old punter in the NFL. Think about it. Everybody's going for it on fourth down now. I might have to boot it 3 times a game. And if I'm back there underneath the field goal post, you just set me off. You flipped the script for the last time, Jim. Now I'm mad. You ruined my day. No.
I love that. That you've already thought it all the way through, which is the best part of that whole conversation. So congratulations again, Murphy. It's great to see you. We will see you again before long.
100%. Okay. Love you guys.
Same. Right back at you. Well, we've gotten to that part of the show that I love the most, and that is it's time for Get Off My Lawn. Now, Get Off My Lawn, if it's the first time you've been with us here on Fans First, if your opinion is straightforward and really wise and terrific and inspirational, we don't kick you off the lawn. We celebrate you by ringing the bell because your submission was that good. If your original piece that you submit is a crazy idea that makes no sense and it's emotional and it's off base, that's when you get kicked off the lawn. So let's see which way this one goes. Well, I can see which way this one's going to go, and it's going to go really in a positive way. We got a great email from James Bush of Virginia Beach, Virginia, said he wanted to reach out to say thank you for something that I probably wouldn't remember. It was the July 4th weekend of 2010. This young man was 13 years old at the time. I invited his dad and him up to the radio booth at Turner Field before the Braves game, and Don Sutton gave him an impromptu pitching lesson on how to throw a breaking ball, something he'll never forget. The reason I invited them is because his dad is Steve Bush. We went to high school together in Roswell, which I had kind of lost touch with him and vice versa. And he also went to University of Georgia, so we had a lot in common. So he wanted to ask for some advice. He said, I studied audio engineering in college, curious about what the producer job for a sports radio program entails. Well, it's more or less a button-pushing job. It's not overly complicated. There are other things that you can do if you've got that degree and you want to go into sports radio or you want to go into television. A lot of times TV has more jobs open than radio, so sometimes they're actually easier to get than a radio job. He says, I listened to the Braves radio broadcast. They always introduce their engineer, which is what prompted his intrigue. Any information I'd be willing to share is greatly appreciated. So that's a little hint of what I think. I think you'd be better off probably trying to get into the TV world where you can be a producer there and probably make more money and have more time before somebody kicks you out, which happens a lot in the media business. He said, lastly, I found your podcast after wondering why I hadn't heard your voice on the radio recently. Didn't realize that I wasn't with the Braves anymore. Said, I've really been enjoying the show. Please keep them coming because your guests are top notch. I also enjoy and appreciate your bluntness with the Get Off My Lawn segment and your assertiveness in tackling the issue of biological men infiltrating female sports. That, my friends, is the definition of ring the bell. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast as much, even half as much, even a quarter as much as I loved it. Murphy Jensen, a fantastic guest with not only great stories about being a tennis player and the people he mixes with and all of that, but also the fact that he has been all the way at the bottom of the mountain and he's been all the way to the top. And he refuses to relent. He never stops and he never will. And Murphy Jensen was a very special guest. I hope that you enjoyed the podcast. So I want to thank our entire crew for helping to put together today's very, very memorable episode. For Abe Fallick, our producer, for Tammy Gagnon, who is back in the studio working like a slave, making things happen to make sure that all of the good stuff that you hear on the podcast gets out to you. For all those folks, we'll see you next time on Fans First, a sports podcast.
Stay tuned, stay passionate, and keep celebrating the sport you love. Visit us at fansfirstpodcast.com to explore more. Sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive updates and follow the podcast on social media to join our growing community of sports enthusiasts. Your voice matters to us, so don't hesitate to share your thoughts and connect with fellow fans. See you next time.